All right, so we're now at section 4 of our agenda, the joint committee reports. And you can see that magician Jeff Cross is with us. And we can speak to his magician skills later. But so the first item on the agenda is the Joint Transportation Planning and Funding Committee. And this is a joint committee that has been struck between members of the Mayor's Council and members of the board. And this committee focuses on the major projects, the planning and funding of that. So I'm going to just introduce the topic, and then Jeff is going to speak more specifically about some of the work that the committee's been doing. This committee's been meeting approximately every 3 to 4 weeks throughout the fall. It's in its advisory capacity. The committee works through and supported the pre-budget proposal to the provincial government on the new carbon tax revenues from the planned rate increases to be allocated to the region based on the proportion generated in Metro Vancouver by transportation. So that's in front of the province as we speak. The committee also reviewed and provided input on the engagement materials for elected officials on the scope of the Phase 2 investments, especially all the bus services. We also reviewed the development of partnership agreements for the 2 major rapid transit projects, expansion projects between TransLink and the City of Surrey and the City of Vancouver, and will outline the commitments of each agency to ensure these projects will successfully achieve the regional and city objectives. The committee also provided input on the new regional development cost charges for the Phase 1 plan and is on today's board agenda. It was acted on by the Mayor's Council last week. And we are also continuing to support conversations with the provincial government to get the agreements and announcements on both the Patello Bridge and the Phase 2 plan in January. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to fill us in on a few more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the only magic I've done is actually make my hair disappear at a much more rapid rate than I would have liked. But and work with some great staff, that's for sure. So the other piece on this, I said that we're working towards a regional funding agreement early in January. Clearly, we've been hoping to have that done before we went on the holiday break. And so that has been the nature of the work at both the Mayor's Council and the board, was to work with the province. We know they've been very busy on a number of files, and at a staff-to-staff level, things are still moving well as far as the major projects. Kevin indicated earlier that we have submitted our draft business cases now for both the Patello Bridge earlier this fall, the Broadway extension, Surrey, Newton, Guildford, and the Expo Millennium upgrade, as well as the other suite of transit capital projects in the next phase of the Mayor's vision. So it is really with the province to work through and to get back to us on what the exact nature of their commitment will be on that regard. So we've met the deadlines that we wanted to hit, and we are looking for some nods from their side in coming weeks in order to be able to stay on schedule to go towards an investment plan early next year. And that is still the objective, even though we might miss this target by a few weeks. We still feel that if we're successful in our conversations with the provincial government early in 2018, that we can prepare an investment plan in February and do consultation in March. You'll see a consultation plan recommendation in your package for approval today in order to be able to put forward the investment plan and hit our procurement schedule going to RFQ by April of 2018 for those major projects. We continue to work very closely on the Patello Bridge with the provincial government as well, and they're committed to us trying to move that as fast as possible. The chair mentioned that some of the focus has been on what the scope of that Phase 2 program is. We did an update last week to the Mayor's Council on all of the engagement on that Scope 2. We met with municipal staff, we met with CAOs, we went to Victoria, I think you're aware, met with the different MLA caucuses from Metro Vancouver to go over what is actually proposed in the full Phase 2. We got a lot of really good feedback, as well as direct workshops with you and the mayors on those proposals. So if you recall, we're looking at not just the major projects in the next round, but the next 2 years of bus service. And given all the increases in demand that we're seeing on the system, we know that we need to get those ready and potentially even accelerate the rollout of those if we're going to be able to meet that and meet our regional objectives. One thing that the Planning and Funding Committee had asked us to do was to identify a scope of potential moderate or accelerated investments beyond the kind of next, what was in the mayor's vision, a little bit faster rollout. We did so. We went through a list of about 200 different bus projects, looking at different priorities, this time from overcrowding to service span to frequency to new areas, etc. Got a lot of great feedback, and as a result we adapted what the proposed starting point, so the minimum bus package would be, and then as well a moderate. So what we could do with an additional 100,000 hours a year if the resources are available with the funding proposal that we agree with the Mayor's Council, the board, and the province, then where the priorities are there. So we had a really good, robust conversation about what those would deliver, the number of people that would be impacted by those, and how that meets with our objectives and city objectives. So I think we have a very good starting template that would act as the basis for consultation with the public in the early next year. And like what we did in the last plan, this would really be around a service plan that outlines exactly the kinds of projects and on what routes that we would be looking at, so it becomes a contract with the public. The other piece that the Mayor's Council also looked at and that we've shared with Planning and Funding is around additional capital funding for the B line or better in the latter years of the plan, given the preparation we've done to date. We think that the expectations of the region and our understanding of the costs and what we can achieve, that's a really cost-effective place to put roughly 5 to 6 million more a year in to be able to achieve those outcomes. So those are the key pieces, Chair, that we're working on. Obviously, the regional revenue source, we've proposed the share of carbon tax is generated within Metro Vancouver from transportation only against the incremental increases they've identified over the next 4 years be allocated, and that we feel that that would serve as the primary new regional revenue source along with our TransLink's own resources and ridership revenue to be able to fully fund it. So we hope in the new year to be able to respond back very quickly and to accelerate our efforts to go out and do consultation. That's my report.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff? I know many of you were on that committee. Linda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jeff, for the report. It's an enormous scope of work that's on your shoulders, and hence why I use the word magician, because it's going to take an enormous effort to get all of the elements of the mayor's plan moving forward. But when you're talking about the outreach work, you're not talking about revisiting the plan or slowing down the plan. I know there has been some comment made in various media around a slowdown of the plan, and to my understanding, both this board and the Mayor's Council have never acknowledged that there was any element of a slowdown. In fact, when I hear you talking about the various opportunities around increased bus service and moving some of those elements up in the plan, that sounds like a faster than slowing down. And certainly with the capital projects, a second question is, will the delay in decision making, and I completely understand that the province has been engaged in other issues for these, but this now should be pretty much at the front of their plate. Has the delay, or will the delay defer procurement opportunities going forward?
Mayor Hebner, so we have no policy direction to veer from our current track, which is to deliver the vision on the timeline that we've identified, that the clock started ticking on November 26, 2016 when you approved phase 1, and so far per Kevin's report, we've delivered all those services on course and on schedule, and that's the direction we've received from the board, the Planning and Funding Committee, and I saw no change in direction from the Mayor's Council last week in that regard. So we are still, in fact, looking, as you said, at accelerating out the rollout of bus service and potentially handy-dart service for years 4 and 5 as well in the plan right now. If we're able to achieve an agreement with the provincial government, both on the capital, so they need to go through their Treasury Board and Cabinet processes on all those major projects, and I think now the queue has maybe been reduced, by mid-January and secure that regional funding agreement probably by the end of January, early February, we can still meet the timelines that we've outlined that are in the latter report that we're going to look at on consultation. In order to be able to have an investment plan in front of you, go out to the public, see what they think about it, because there's a lot in there. Have an investment plan in front of you that responds to that you could approve by late March or early April, and thus we could go to RFQ. All the work that we're doing was be lined up to be able to do that. If it delays a couple weeks past there, then the clock starts ticking and it does cost us more money. We're aware every day because of both construction inflation, because of property increases, etc. You know, it could be on the order of $10 million a month that it would cost for the major projects. So we know we need to move. We're right in that tight window right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No other questions for Jeff on this one? Okay, we're going to move now to the Mobility Pricing Steering Committee, and I co-chair that with Mayor Richard Walton. And the Joint Mobility Steering Committee met on December 12th, which was just a few days ago, to receive a status update from the Mobility Pricing Independent Commission. So this committee, this joint committee of the board, launched this independent commission, and now they operate totally separate and independent from TransLink, but they are reporting to this joint committee periodically just to make sure that we are staying in lockstep on certain issues. And one of them in particular is the review that we're doing on the transit fare review that is scheduled to come forward to us in 2018. So the committee received the report. The chair and the executive director came and reported to us about the work they've been doing, the consultation that they've been doing, and then the further anticipation of them coming back to us. We expect to receive a kind of a status report from them in April as to what they feel they've learned from all their work, and I'll turn it over to Jeff now to give you some more specifics.
So the only additional things that we'd add, so as the chair rightly points out, it is an independent commission. In essence, TransLink acts as an in-house consultant providing some modeling and capabilities to them. We run things as they see fit for that. One of the things that is in your package is a report on the before and after on the toll removal. That's a really timely piece of information that we are now sharing with the Independent Commission because it's a de facto in-field test of what happens when we look at pricing. So we've been calibrating our models accordingly and we'll be providing that to them. In that regard, we're also working very closely, and we've been happy to see the new provincial government be open to this, to be better integrated on how we do forecasting and modeling within the region so that we maintain the regional transportation model and that everybody agrees that we all the assumptions that underpin it, how we manage it, etc., is appropriate, and so we have a single source of truth in that regard. That applies both to the Mobility Pricing Independent Commission, to our major projects, to the review of the Massey Tunnel replacement, all of those things. So we're making some progress that will be a good foundation for the Independent Commission to do its work, as well as assuming there are recommendations that can be acted on by the board, the Mayor's Council, and the province, then the project would probably come into TransLink and we'd work with our partners on how to advance it. So the fare policy is another piece where we're just wrapping up the phase 3 consultation. We had, I believe, over 15,000 people participate. We will be giving them input on the questions around distance-based preferences, time and day, that are probably very relevant to the road system as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff on this item before we move on? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to turn the floor over to Larry Beasley, who is the chair of our Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee. Now, this is a board committee versus the joint committee that we do with the mayors. So, Larry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, when we met on November the 28th, we covered most of the things that we've been talking about today and most of the things that are on the remainder of our agenda. And so I'm not going to go over those in detail, but there are a couple of things that I did want to highlight. One thing which is not on today's agenda is that we looked at the Customer Communications and Public Affairs Quarterly Report, and what we received there was really what we have been doing, but also what we intend to do over the next quarter or so. And we were all quite impressed that we are significantly increasing our outreach to customers and other citizens about not only all the new things that are happening, but that are high profile and get natural coverage, but also the things that are happening like the expansion of the buses, et cetera, which does not get such natural profile. We had a long presentation about that service delay that was already presented today. There's two things that weren't presented there that I wanted to highlight that we were impressed by. One was that a lot of attention is now being put by the staff on the quick response to those delays and how to improve our systems, particularly our in-house communication systems, in order to make those responses a lot faster. And then the second was on customer communication, and they discovered some aspects of customer communication that could be improved quickly and easily and cheaply that would really help our customers. And we were impressed by the attention to that and wanting to move on that fairly quickly. Again, stakeholder relations is our mandate. We also had a report out on the Mobility Pricing Commission and the update to that point, which was even further expanded in the meeting that Jeff just talked about. The other thing we were given a detailed update on was the supportive agreements between TransLink and the municipalities that relate to the major rapid transit expansion projects. And we were able to give our input on what we thought was important in those agreements. And what's people may not realize about those agreements is that this is where the municipalities sign on beyond their mandate with TransLink to do other things that would help these expansions be successful, all kinds of things, and we felt that that was a very positive thing. And we also had an update on the transit fare review. Particularly what we were impressed with is how well the public seems to be understanding what's at stake in how we do fares and what the choices are. It seems that the communication's been very, very good on that. In addition to that, we covered eliminating the bridge tolls, which Jeff has already mentioned. We had a detailed report on that. That's on the consent agenda for everyone to receive today. We covered the proposal for development cost charges, which is one of the few things that's outstanding in terms of the municipal or the local share of these new rapid transit expansions. We covered the public engagement strategy for the Phase 2 investment plan, which Jeff has already mentioned. And then we had three items which are the key items on today's agenda, and we were able to provide our advice in detail, and they all relate to custom transit, the implementation of the many recommendations that came from users, the implementation of the Universal Fare Gate Access Program, the soft launch, which will be covered shortly later, and of course the procurement program. What we were very impressed by was that the other initiatives that go beyond just procurement are very much related to making the experience better for the customer. And particularly that set of recommendations that came from users and how those are very aggressively being implemented. So that, in a sense, our judgment was that regardless of what comes out of procurement, and there's a lot that needs to come out of that, that in fact attention to the customer is at the top of everyone's agenda, and improving that customer experience through all kinds of measures that the customer told us about. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that, but that was what we were doing, and it was a very long and busy meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So as Larry mentioned, we do have a consent agenda in front of us, and that's the transportation impact of the eliminating of the bridge tolls. Jeff, did you want to speak at all to that, or are we just receiving that as information?
You're receiving that as information. We'll post the report is posted in the agenda package. We'll also be publishing a more detailed analysis, including graphs and charts on what's happened, to be able to inform anybody who's interested in that.
Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is the Custom Transit Service Delivery Review. So this is the update on the implementation of recommendations. And once again, we have Jeff. You're here for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, sorry.
Before Jeff starts, and I think Sarah Ross is going to come up and join Jeff. First, I want to thank the delegations, the folks that came and spoke earlier in the meeting during the public delegation process, and a number of you have been coming for a while. Beth McKellar, who was here, and she stepped away as well, I know has been, there's Beth, has had a lot of interest in this as well. I first just want to state that this whole issue, the Handy-Dart issue, the service that we provide, not just for Handy-Dart, but in general, the accessibility of our transit system, the buses, the SkyTrain, is very, very important to me personally. I have spent a lot of time on this. I will continue to spend a lot of time on this. And in fact, in my previous jobs, this has always been, in many respects, an outsized portion of our responsibilities as transit managers. And folks should know you have my commitment that this will remain one of the top agenda elements. This is not a small portion of our attention span at TransLink, and in fact, in many respects, we're very proud of the accessibility of our broad system. We have one of the most accessible rapid transit systems in North America, and we're among the leaders in accessibility on the bus side, and we need to improve Handy-Dart service. And my approach to this has been really three-pronged: accountability, service quality, and the amount of service that we provide. On the amount of service that we provide, thanks to the mayor's plan, as I pointed out in my earlier report, we're making good progress in that area. We've got additional funding, and we will continue to expand the ability to provide service over the second 2 years, the second and third year of the 3-year Phase 1 plan. On the accountability side, the first thing that I put in place and asked the president of CNBC to elevate the management and oversight of Handy-Dart service, and that's in the person of Louise Hardy, who's in the audience, and many of you know Louise. But that's also symbolic, and it's also the notion that we had far too arm's length relationship with the Handy-Dart product itself. We left it up to the contractor, MVT, without a lot of hands-on relationship to the customer experience. So one of the elements that we changed that came out of the recommendations, in part the conversations with our advisory committee, was to take that responsibility in-house as well. And you'll hear from Jeff in the third of his reports on the new Handy-Dart contract that we're proposing, that there are additional improvements in that as well. And then on the service quality side, that's really embodied on the advisory committee recommendations. So what you'll be hearing from over these next 3 items that Jeff will be leading with Sarah's support is an update on what we're doing on the service quality side, being responsive to our customers, and eventually how we will operate the service going forward. So my commitment as the CEO will remain to be very, very focused on this. I think for many of the comments and recommendations and suggestions made by the delegations, in point of fact, Jeff actually will be covering off and answering, I think, some of those points that those of you who spoke have raised. So to Jeff for the update on the custom transit service project.
Thank you, Kevin. So Sarah Ross, our Director of System Management, is here, has been leading, she and the Access Transit Group have been leading all of this work with a lot of integration with Louise Hardy and the group at CNBC, but this been a cross enterprise effort because it touches a lot of us, whether it be in BTS, whether it be in procurement, so it's a broad effort. In your package is an update on the progress that we're making around the policy recommendations that you approved earlier this year in March. So if you recall, we're basically, I think we're in month 18 roughly of this review. So back in March of 2016, Kevin, and with your support, committed to do the Custom Transit Service Delivery Review and to do it in a way that really engaged stakeholders and users, so that when we came forward we had something that we collectively thought would really improve the customer experience in the delivery. And so we continue to work kind of in parallel on both the policy improvements, and this is there are detailed notes in the report before you that we also discussed with the planning and stakeholder committee about where we're really making progress, where we might be a little bit slower than we would like, but what we're planning to do in 2018 to be able to deliver on those. So we're thrilled, that we've continued to be able to engage the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and our Standing User Advisory Committee to be able to advance on these. So of the 19, I want to just point out a few and then maybe open it up for questions or any other reflections from Sarah or Kevin in this regard. So you see under improving customer experience and reducing wait times, one of the key things for us is about accountability. So in tandem with launching the accountability dashboard, which we've now added wait times as one of the metrics, there are a number of things that we're reporting on regularly there, not just about the conventional system, but about our Handy Dart services, including what's our ridership, what are the trips delivered, what are the denial rates, so that we'll be able to see those over time and that everybody's working from one source. So that's really important to us. On the next page, a number of things related to taxis that are underway. So Kevin mentioned in his opening remarks in regards to actually late night service, but it's important to note that the review that the provincial government is doing on ride hailing and taxis is really important to us, not just in the role that they play in mobility in the future, but also because the use of taxis is an essential piece to us right now within the Handy Dart service, and so how is that taken account in that review on wherever they go with ride hailing. So we'll continue to have those conversations with them. On the second piece that you see there, the second bullet about implement mechanisms to improve customer service from taxi. So we are working on the assumption that we will bring in-house those contracts into TransLink by mid-2018. And through that, what we would like to do is really develop contractual levers whereby we can get better performance, clearer accountability, incentivize that with the providers and have control over that. And we own the customer, so it's really important that we have mechanisms by which we have feedback and are able to adjust course on that. So we think that's a really important piece. A number of areas are underway as far as making sure that Handy Dart trips are available when customers need them. So the availability of Handy Dart trips, we rolled out 7.5% increase this year. We'll have a 15% increase by the end of year 3 of the Mayor's vision. We look at trying to increase that going even forward. The direction from the Mayor's Council and the board is to work with the new government and also identify who's the best delivery mechanism or delivery agent for a broad range of whether it be medical related trips or otherwise, and ensure that adequate and appropriate funding is there. So we might even be trying to identify and secure more funding to ensure that we have the right level of supply on Handy Dart. We also want to make sure that on the individualized travel training program that we're in a place by 2018 to have this ready and rolled out. You will see within the budget that's proposed to you later on today, actually there are funds dedicated to that to be able to put that in place. We've done some preliminary work, but not as far as we would like. Similarly on a family of services, that's on near the top of our to-do list, is to really get that ready, working also into next year with the new contracts to be able to deliver on that. So that's kind of a very quick overview of the 19. One other piece that was really important that wasn't quite policy, but was around the service delivery, was around the customer feedback. And bringing that in-house, which we did even quicker than we had originally planned. So that happened in October, and that's the point. It's really essential that we own the customer, and our customers need to have access to TransLink unfettered to know that we're listening to them and we can adjust to all of our services. We think that's a really important foundation piece for all the service delivery models and in negotiating good contracts, whether they be with taxi providers or the call center or the trip delivery. So that's happened, and we're really pleased with that, and we'll be able to report in coming months on what we're hearing from that. So I open it up for questions.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have my microphone on. Any questions for Jeff? Yes, Larry, and then Greg.
Sarah and maybe Louise, can you just tell us two things. One is, how many people, users in particular, have you been engaged with as you both were generating the list that we approved months ago and as you've been implementing? I mean, roughly. And then secondly, tell us a little bit more about the advisory committee. I've been led to understand the advisory committee are users, they're people who's in the system every day who know the problems, but tell us a bit about how many are there and how do they get on the committee?
Sure, thank you. So over the course of the review process, we engaged with over 150 people, including active customers, stakeholders, and people who advocate on behalf of our customers, as well as employees of the current in the current operation. The advisory committee was made up of about a dozen people, and it had both customers that we drew from a geographic distribution in the region. It included some of the stakeholder advocate, including members from the Handy Dart Riders Alliance, as well as a retired employee was part of that committee, as well as including also the health authorities, recognizing that they're important, them and their clients are important users of the Handy Dart system as well.
And just to follow up, when Louise has been out speaking with individual users who've had difficulties of one kind or another, you were also feeding that in, weren't you, into your thinking? And I wonder how many people has she engaged with?
I don't know if she has a number that she talks to on a fairly regular basis, but certainly, I mean, this has been, you know, over a year and a half of us doing a very deep dive and trying to understand the service and what's driving the customer experience, and we're drawing in that from a variety of sources, including every person that we talk to, whether it's a phone call that comes in from a customer, what we read through the customer feedback, what we're learning from best practices on peer agencies. So absolutely drawing on all of that.
I'm glad to hear that, because it was very important that we go beyond. As a planner, I know you often engage with people who know systems and give you good advice, but it's also important to get beyond that to use everyday users. And that's what I found from you've confirmed was happening here, is that you were getting right down to people who use the system and know what the problems are from their use, didn't you? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gregor, and then Marcella. You're good? Okay, question answered. Marcella.
Thank you. I had a question about the portion of the services that you brought in-house, the direct relationship with the customer. You said that October-ish you brought that in-house and you're handling the customer complaints directly. What has been the impact, or if any, or is it too early? I know it's been very soon, 2 months, a month and a half.
So our commitment was to bring it in, I think, by the end of the year, and we were able to implement that ahead of schedule. And so as of October 1st, it's actually no external change to the customer. They still phone the same phone number, and they still press the same option in the phone tree. But what has changed is sort of behind the scenes is that those phone calls now get routed to what we call the Access Transit Customer Care Group that exists under Louise's direction at CMBC. And they're the people who also support all of the registration process. And so they're receiving the customer complaints. And so we're continuing to monitor and review those. We have seen a little bit of an increase in the customer feedback so far this fall. So we're continuing to look into what that and monitoring it.
Okay.
I wish I could say know what's going on. I'll find out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, let's go to the next. And now this requires an approval for us. So this is the Universal Fairgate Access Program soft launch. So Jeff, turn it over to you.
So thank you, Chair. Within your package is a report including resolutions looking for approval from the board on both the eligibility and application process, as well as the approval of a soft launch of this using the RFID card as valid fare media. And I'm going to take you through a bit of the program right now. We're actually really excited about this, where we ended up with the solution. If you recall, you directed back in June 2016 to come up with a long-term hands-free solution for people. TransLink has been basically, we scoured, I would say, the planet to look for options on what might work, did not find an off-the-shelf variety that we felt would work. So where we ended up is, I think, a cutting-edge solution. I'll walk you through that a bit. I think you've had a bit of a briefing. But it's really important to us that we provided seamless access for people if we were able to, and I think we now have, for people with a disability who at some point or another are unable to tap without assistance. So whether that be all the time or just on a temporary basis, that they should have complete access and access to our fare system as well as what we want to do in the long term. So that's where we're ending up, and that's where the recommendation goes. So how it works is that a person approaches the gates, and the RFID card sends out a signal, and the sensors above the gates, once you get within close proximity, open those gates. And it's not all the gates, they're marked accordingly, and they're the wider gates for easier access going in and out. So we had looked at different options. Coming up at this, what we found out is no other transit system, as we can find out, on the planet has ever employed this, at least on a wide scale. So we're really thrilled about this, and it seems to be working really well. All along the way, we've been designing this with the users. So it's been really important to us that not just that we know that the test of concept works with the users, but that the way the program is designed, the way that we interact with staff, etc., meets their needs for respect and for performance that they want to get out of this new service. So it's fairly simple. We've watched it work, and we've piloted it on a number of stations, 3 stations so far, and it's worked very well. So we've been meeting with our users to work through this. We've met on site. We met at Edmonds. I think that's where the picture is from, to work with users and actually try it under different configurations to make sure that the gates would operate accordingly. Engineering has been working on rolling those out across the system. We are making very good progress on that. We're not going to have them all rolled out by January of this year, but we hope to by later in 2018 have all of the stations equipped with this. So the response both on the technology from the users that have been involved, as well as the way that we've designed the registration process to try and parallel our existing HandyDart processes around eligibility and registration, have been met favorably, and we've tailored them based on the input that we've received. So there in front of you is part of the registration requirement. This is very similar to a HandyDart. So it's important to note those people that are already have a HandyDart card and have gone through that eligibility process do not have to confirm it again with a medical practitioner. We think that those will be the majority of the people that will be asked to enroll in the actual system, but if you're not, that this is the steps that you would have to go through. So that's the actual criteria. Here's the process by which, so you apply through, as Sarah pointed out, through the Access Transit Group at CMBC. Your application would be reviewed, and what we would do is set up a meeting with a medical practitioner, probably an occupational therapist, at a station of your choosing on the SkyTrain, or it could be at Lonsdale Quay on the C-Bus, to be able to go and do an assessment. And they'll take a look at, you know, obviously confirming the eligibility, that that you meet those needs, that you need assistance in tapping, but also figuring out, more importantly, on what the best device is for you. And you know, what we're talking about today is an RFID card that's important to note is not the same as a Compass card right now. So it's separate outside the Compass system, which is why we're asking for the approvals on this. But there are other devices that Kurt Pregler and his group and Compass have been working on over time that can help you assist using Compass so that you have all the flexibility with a Compass Pass as well. So we'll be working on that, so the occupational therapist would be able to look at the person's needs, tailor what the appropriate device is, how you use it, where it might be located on your person or your mobility device as well. This would then be confirmed after that session with the Access Transit and the RFID card sent out. So why we're talking about it as a soft launch, as what is outlined in your program, is that two things. It's going to take us a while to get all the gates in place and to be able to operate the fare system. Similar to what we do on Compass, the gates need to work on both ends to be able to calculate the fare. The second piece is really what's the usage pattern? Who's actually going to be using that? Until we start the program, we don't know exactly who, how often, what the range will be, so that we can design a back office program that's fitting to that. It could be that it's rather small if the population is small, or it might need to be more automated as such. So we want to see what that looks like through the course of the year. Come back to you by the end of next year or after we've got full rollout and know what that is. Right now we're predicting that that would be later in 2018, and as such the soft launch is recommended to last through December 31st of 2018. But we think that this will provide an unparalleled level of accessibility to a gated system anywhere in the world. So we're really thrilled about where the solution ended up. We didn't know where we would end up, but we think it's going to be excellent. So we'll leave it there.
So Kevin just wants to add
wanted to
something.
one more thing. So to date, we've installed at 26 stations. So that's a little bit less than half of the system so far, and that's on the Expo and Millennium line. So really good progress. And I also do want to give a hats off to the pretty ingenious work that the team has done, whether it was from the infrastructure side, the IT side, and of course the engagement side. This is a really homegrown kind of solution, and homegrown with the users directly involved in it. And I'm pleased with the progress that we've made so far, and I think that mid-year full installation is quite doable.
Thank you. So Anne has a question, and then we'll go to Larry, and then Murray.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is, and I don't need an answer, is just that I would hope we'd find a way to share this technology with other systems so that we can help others. And the question is whether in doing this work, making this portion of the system more accessible to people, for which I commend you, whether the users were able to identify other pinch points in the system that, whether we got incidental knowledge or other helpful knowledge from the group as we went through this exercise.
It's a good perspective. There are other pinch points in the system, in the whole sort of service design and how a person interacts with this on their trip. So there are other pieces that we'll need to look at over time. A lot of systems are looking at them. Elevators are one of those areas, right, that naturally require a similar kind of technology or interaction to be able to make them operate. So that would be a follow-up kind of piece to look at in the future. Sarah, are there others?
One of those pictures is with a woman named Pam Horton. Anytime I'm out on the system with her, she's flagging small and large things and sending me emails about the vending machine that's in the way of the accessible bathroom and things like that. So yes.
Yeah, I met her. She's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Larry?
One thing when we were having the discussion in committee and also reading the report that I was pretty excited about was that anyone that is going to be taking advantage of this service gets a personal, almost like orientation and training, don't they? And so you don't just get something through the mail after you apply. You have that whole thing where you're going to sit down, work with the people and make sure they know how to use it. And also, don't you help them with trip training where they might need to go the handy dart route, where they can go on the system? Isn't it and isn't this kind of a new service that we haven't really seen before?
So certainly, absolutely, what would happen is we'd have an occupational therapist go and meet with them, help them understand, and just also we have to make sure we know where the card works. Is it on their person? If they put it inside their coat, will it work? Can it be affixed to their chair? Showing them where exactly it's going to trigger. So that very much is going to be how we're customizing this and working with them on an individual basis. The other training, kind of more broadly training, is certainly that is something we can also support, and I anticipate that one of our, in addition to the occupational therapist, one of our staff would, that's Erin Windross on my team in there as well, would be out supporting any other questions. And then that broader training on how to use the conventional system will be part of that travel training program that we'll be implementing in 2018.
So this is really meant at a very personal, individual level to help people use the conventional system in the way that universal accessibility principles say, that they're not sent over to some other system. They have access to the system that everyone else has, more or less in the way that everyone else has it, and you personally will sit with each one of those people. I mean, I must say, as a transit user, I wish I had had that orientation just for myself. But I think this is a really good thing, but it does make sure the system will be very useful for the customers who choose to use it. Isn't that right?
Yes. Our objective is to have our transit system be absolutely as accessible as possible, and we continue in every opportunity, and this is an excellent example of innovating it. Accessibility is far more than just having elevators in station. There's many, many more things, and every time we do an upgrade to a station, for example, we're introducing new elements to try to advance that accessibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to, I guess, ask a question for the purpose of clarifying that the special assistance program that we put in place in advance of this project being completed remains in full effect, and so there's no change to that until this program is fully rolled out, and we feel comfortable that it's offering a service that is needed in the market.
Yes, that special assistance program is still in effect, and it will remain in effect because it remains an ongoing program for our visually impaired customers who still from time to time need assistance navigating through the system. And so that program is a long-standing program that we had. We expanded it a bit to be broader than just visually impaired persons, but we will absolutely keep that program going, and people will be able to call the station assistance.
So just a supplemental then, where do people who may need that special assistance go to find out information about it?
There's a phone number that's actually on each one of our accessible gates, as well as there's information on our website about the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Tony's next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say that the Audit and Finance Committee also received this report. Our focus was on the recommendation of not to charge during the soft launch, and for the reasons that Jeff just enunciated in his verbal report, and so the Audit and Finance Committee recommended that to the full board.
Thank you. Jim?
This access was very important to the board, and I'm very pleased, very excited to see the progress that's been made by staff. So kudos to you and everybody that worked on this. I'm just wondering, how many people will be now having this access, approximately?
Well, it's universally, anybody can apply that meets those criteria. We're uncertain at this point, I would say. It could be in the tens at this point, but we don't know until people come forward and see it, whether they see it as a benefit. We're going to see.
Thank you, Jim. Linda?
Thank you, and I want to just add my kudos to, we gave you the problem. This is why I say you're magic. We gave you the problem. It does not exist on transportation agencies throughout the world, and you came up with a solution that is customer focused. And I think that's what we really asked you to do, is take a look at the customers and how we could better assist them, given that the Compass card was proving difficult relative to their access. So I just want to say thank you very much to you and your team, because it's not always that, I mean, you could have come back and said there isn't anything we can do, but you didn't. Instead, you looked at what is the kind of solution that we would expect of this agency, and you took innovation into account as you came up with the solution. So I can be flowery because it's my last meeting, so I intend on doing that. And it is magic, thank you. And I think adding to Anne's comments, I do believe you should be sharing this with other transportation agencies and putting it in for some kind of recognition award Mr. CEO, because I think it's well worthy of both the public's understanding of the lengths that you've gone to and the expectations of this board relative to public customer service. So thank you.
If I will, so we are going to submit it to conferences. Thank you, Mayor Hebner, and actually the accolades on the design of the final solution really go to the BTS group and the engineering group, not the planners, the real detailed technology people. They, through trial and error on a number of things, they're the ones that got to there. So we designed the processes, they get the solution, and we're thrilled with where they got, but we will try and spread that around.
Thank you. And Larry has another question?
No, I want
Oh,
to
you-
move, I want to move the recommendations.
Oh, you
please.
do? All right. Well, why don't you do that then? Okay, so on page 39 of your package, you have the proposed resolution. I won't read it out, but essentially it's to approve the eligibility criteria and the application process for the universal fare gate. And as Tony suggested, Finance and Audit has already looked at this because we're essentially waiving any collection of fees for a period of time. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to keep the system moving, provide this service, even though we're not finished with it. Wherever it's installed, people can have access. So all in favor, or you're moving, second, and all in favor, thank you very much. Okay, item number 5.5, Custom Transit Services Procurement. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Also in your package is report number 3 on this, and this is an action item with 2 recommendations that are before you that we'll ask you to move at the end if you're supportive. But importantly, paraphrasing that it is to negotiate a contract with First Canada ULC for both the call center and the trip delivery, and to authorize the CEO to execute that contract beginning July 1st, 2018. So what I'd like to do is a very short presentation, go a bit over where we got to and how we got to this, and then open it up for conversation based on the more detailed memo that's there. This obviously builds on a lot of the work, and this is why we did them in these orders, the presentation. So we have continued to work with the stakeholder and users on implementing the outcomes of the Custom Transit Service Delivery Review. This was the second piece of that, was actually to look at a delivery model. We worked with the stakeholder group on how we might develop the evaluation criteria that would allow us to best put forward a procurement RFQ and get bidders that would be able to provide service and bids that would allow us, per that sort of second bullet, to really achieve the service and policy outcomes. Those 19 other things that we identified would give us the best chance at succeeding at those through a new contract with whoever comes forward as the successful bidder. So we wanted to make sure, now that we own the customer through the customer feedback loop, that we're very clear there, that we have those levers in place for flexibility and for incentives, financial and otherwise, to make sure that we can get the performance and that we have the accountability and transparency to do so. So they're listed in your report, what those evaluation criteria would be. Many of them are what you would expect, but really looking at the qualifications of the firms, we wanted to make sure they had the experience delivering this scale of operation. If you recall, we were looking at 2 things per the recommendations that you provided to us back in March of this year, that when we go forward to procurement, that we look at both whether the call center should be delivered in-house or contracted out. So look for proposals and look at the cost of that and do that assessment. Also look at, based on the bids that come in for service delivery, whether or not we go forward with 1 contract or 2, and to make sure that we validate the cost accordingly on that as well. The third really important thing that you noted that then comes forward into the way we structured the procurement was on ensuring that there was preferential hiring for existing employees, given the the relationship, the important relationship that they have with our current users, and the expertise and knowledge that they bring to the system. So that was also built into the procurement model. So we had a very competitive process. The RFP went out in early July, had a couple of months, so mid-September, and since that time, evaluation team has been working through looking at all the different strengths on each one of the components. Some of the things obviously are both their background, what technology and information security that they would bring to bear, whether it be the call center or the trip delivery, the level of customer service, the maintenance programs, the trip reliability, the personnel training, those assurances around hiring. It was really important, the kind of administration that they bring. And of course, the secondary piece of this that's important is the value for money, both validating what the public sector comparator that we did with the support of PricewaterhouseCoopers earlier. So once those were based on estimates, now that we have bids, taking a look at that and how does it match up against what we saw early last year. So cutting to the chase, so per the evaluation, on a number of fronts, First Canada had the strongest recommendation, strongest proposal, and as such is the basis for our recommendation of going with them for both the call center and for the trip delivery. On the call center, they bring forward a lot of expertise. They're running systems across North America and Europe. They are the provider in Victoria of HandyDart, and what we really learned as part of the evaluation process, looking at the bids of all of the vendors that went forward in this regard, is this is a really high expertise function, the call center. It's not just about call center, obviously, that sort of undermines the level of complexity of that operation with trip scheduling, et cetera, that's done, and that these companies are investing in training and in technology across North America that we would benefit from. And so we saw that as a real strength. First Canada had a very strong proposal in that area, and we recognized through reviewing all of these proposals that we do not feel that we have that in-house capability at this point, and it would take years to be able to get to that level, to be able to match or exceed what they're able to bring. Also, we found that it was the best value for money, so you had asked us to take a look at when we get real bids as opposed to estimates, how does that compare against the public sector comparator that we did back in April, where we came forward with what we thought would be savings of roughly 1 to 3.5% for the whole function. On the call center, we saw that even the highest cost bid from the shortlist was 12% less expensive than us bringing it in-house based on our estimates, and the preferred vendor even higher than that. On the service delivery, also that First Canada came forward with a very strong bid. They have a lot of experience, not just in HandyDart, but they're operating some of our community shuttles already within Metro Vancouver. They understand the business, and they came forward with a very strong proposal on both their service and their maintenance, their scheduling, all of these things, as well as their training piece. They also were very explicit, you see that in the bullet, about their hiring and the conversations with Amalgamated Transit Union, and that they would be going forward and offering them positions with that provision that you see in front of you. So we felt that we had exceeded even what was asked of us by the board in the procurement relative to preferential hiring based on what they've committed to in this. On the actual cost element of this, so when we looked at the overall bid for both the call center and service delivery, it came in even better than what I had outlined and what we had estimated earlier in the year, which, as I mentioned, was sort of 1 to 3%. We think it could be on the order of 5 to 10%. When I say think, we still have to negotiate the final contract. There are some elements that will be in and out, whether it be what properties we use, etc. But the bids from a number of the participants came in very strong, very competitive. So we believe that there'll be very good value for money. And on that element, that is something that we need to do some policy work, but we believe that that means that we can take those dividends, any dividends that we achieve, provide them into either more service or more accessibility investments to further the quality of service for our vendors there. Finally, I mentioned that they're already operating across Canada and have good experience with us and with other vendors. They operate 10,000 vehicles across Canada, whether it be transit vehicles or school buses or Greyhound, those kinds of things. So they have a lot of experience, and we feel very solid with that. We also felt, importantly, that their transition plan was the strongest, and they have a lot of experience, as do many of these companies, taking over different contracts, and that we would have the utmost confidence that we could successfully have a clean and smooth transition by July 1st of next year. So that is the basis of our recommendation. I'm sure that CEO or Sarah might want to jump in with an emphasis on an area, but this has been a real painstaking approach, like that's culminated from 18 months of working with the users, working with stakeholders, hearing from the providers. We have not taken this lightly.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Kevin has something he'd like to add.
Thank you for that, Jeff, a good overview. I just want to underscore a couple of things. First, the third bullet with the provisions for the existing employees. We made that a condition in the RFP for any successful bidder. In fact, any qualified bidder would have to commit to providing preferential hiring to the existing employees, and First Canada has in fact gone beyond that and has already, I think, had contacts with the amalgamated transit unions. Will recognize the union, will be recognizing the existing labor contract, and otherwise as outlined in the third bullet with the singular conditions. So I would expect that the vast majority, if not everybody, will be hired back. And then secondly, I've had personal contact with senior executives at both First Canada and MVT. I thanked MVT for their 9 years of service for HandyDart and for the remaining 6 months of their contract, and I was assured that they would do everything in their power to work very closely with First Canada to make for a very smooth transition. So we will keep very close eye on that. That is essential for our customers, and it's essential for the great employees of MVT at this point in time. Folks in here represent or are employees of MVT now. We know you guys do great work, and we hope that transition as well goes very, very smoothly.
Thank you, Kevin. Jim.
So Jeff, thank you for the report today, as well as the written reports that were given to the board over a period of time. And you mentioned best value for money by going First Canada. You also mentioned some percentage savings. Are you able to talk in terms of magnitude of dollars that are saved, and maybe how that translates to service that we can or cannot provide if we move to an in-house model, which is obviously a very important objective of some, it's a suggestion that's been made to us by some very important stakeholders.
Yes, I can. Sort of conditionally, we do need to finalize those things. So if we're able to achieve that sort of on the order of 5 to 10% less for sort of a full year cost, then we need to do some policy work. We need to do it with you. We need to do the mayor's with the Mayor's Council. But we feel if we're able to deliver the same amount for less, then that gives us more resources to be able to invest back into this. So that's on the order of several $1 million a year, 5 to 10% on our sort of $56 million budget, I think, for HandyDart this year. So that's significant. That's either a lot more trips that we can put out on the road if that's the most appropriate place to do it, or other accessibility improvements, whether we still have a fair bit of work to do on our bus system, et cetera, on the conventional to be able to do that. So we've recognized that getting out more trips, getting more accessibility is really important. So having the means to do so and do so quickly would be a real benefit.
So the policy objective you're looking for is to reinvest those savings back into this service.
that would be something that we would bring forward to the board and the mayor's council as some options.
Yeah, and Jim, I would extend that to the accessibility of the transportation network itself. You know, that goes back to the prior discussion on the universal fare gates. It's really understanding in consultation with our users, back to the previous conversation, where and how can we apply, you know, that dividend, if you will. Also, importantly, I think during the advisory committee process, a number of the recommendations, a number of the conversations that led to some of the recommendations, we had this sort of trade-off issue about, well, if you pushed it in this direction, it means there's less money for a number of trips. If you push it to more and more trips, it might undermine the service quality as it relates to, say, the booking time, the pickup and drop-off windows, and so on and so forth. So those might be opportunities to address some of the other service quality recommendations that were actually made by the advisory committee that heretofore we might not have had quite the same resources to apply. So what I would do is, if once we finalize the contract if it is approved today with First Canada, I think it's an opportunity to go back to these various stakeholder groups and talk about, okay, what else can we be doing? Whether it's more trips, whether it's something else in the overall accessibility of the system, whether it's other service quality improvements we can implement.
Thank you. Larry, next.
2 comments and a question. The first comment is on behalf of our committee, the Stakeholder and our Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee. We did review this on a number of times in a great deal of detail, and unanimously we were supportive of these recommendations. I know that was also reviewed by other committees, but I feel obliged to say that our committee did that very detailed review and asked hundreds of questions through the process here. My second comment has to do with the, I was pleased to see that First Canada did not have any argument with the idea of bringing on the existing drivers, the existing people in the organization. And the reason for that is, from the beginning, if there was one thing we heard from users, it was that they really appreciated the quality and nature and attitude of the services of the drivers, regardless who they work for. But they really appreciated that. And I agree with the delegate earlier today who said, you know, unless those people come on, you lose something dramatically in terms of the quality of service and the expectations for our users. So I was very happy that First Canada had no problems with that from what you've said. The third is really a question that relates to an earlier delegate who said maybe we should just hold this off. And I got the impression, and I might be wrong, but that one of the reasons that delegate made that suggestion was the question of what are the benefits of bringing it in-house rather than not in-house, and keeping it as a service by a contractor. Could you just describe, I know you took this very seriously, and I recall the reports that you gave us. You did a very tight technical analysis of the comparator, and could you just spend a couple of sentences on how that was done? Because I know our committee, and I think I speak for all the committee, we found that a very compelling, technically competent argument, and I think it was even third party that you did it through. But could you just describe that?
Certainly. So in the review that began in the early summer of 2016 that led up to the recommendations at the March meeting, we did an extensive review, and we looked at almost every option under the sun on service delivery models, bringing all of it in, everything from the full turnkey model that we have today, where even the customer feedback is contracted out, to bringing everything in-house, and then almost every option in between. And we assess that in both qualitative components, looking at each of these different models, how do they impact the customer experience in terms of the ability to achieve high standards of outcomes, and also the financial components. And so, you know, our assessment at that time, and then confirmed through both the procurement and evaluation process that we have been through over the past 6 months, really since March, has confirmed that, you know, that, as Jeff said, this is a very, very specialized business that, these contracting companies, and First Canada included, as with our current contractor, have extensive expertise in this business and experience running these call center custom transit services across Canada and across North America. And so where we see, what we have the opportunity here is also that the contract itself provides an opportunity for us to have contractual mechanisms to ensure a high standard of performance can be achieved. And so we include in this contract, we are making some changes to the standards in this new contract that we engaged very extensively with stakeholders and laid out with them, here's a possible metric, the current performance, and here's what we would propose. In almost, I think in every case, we're embedding standards that are higher than what we currently have today, and that the nature of the contract and the way we're setting that up allows us a mechanism to really hold the provider to account on those.
So on the one hand, you were saying, as I recall in the comparator, that not only would it take us several years to build the expertise, but also that we can set a higher standard, and now we'll have more of an ability to manage that standard and get performance, in a sense, demand performance. And there's a financial side of it as well. So but that was a very careful comparator, wasn't it? And was it done by an independent third party?
So the financial component was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Okay.
They're a well-established accounting firm. And then the qualitative assessment, we had input from, some of that was done in-house by staff, some of that certainly drawing on all the feedback that we got through our engagement, as well as we retained a firm, Nelson Nygaard, who are experts in transit planning, I guess you would call it, and in custom transit.
So it was carefully done. Okay.
Thank you, Larry. Gregor.
Yeah, just a question about transition and ensuring that there's a smooth transition and guaranteeing that there's continuity of service for all Handy Dart riders. What's the plan for that? If this is to be approved, how are we going to make sure that that's what happens?
There are 5,000 trips every day on Handy Dart, and our absolute top priority is that there is never a single break in that, and that we have a seamless transition, and those trips are delivered, and people get to their medical appointments and their other appointments and places, their jobs and programs they need to go to. So, transition is going to be something that we're going to pay a lot of attention to. It's a big deal. And facilitating discussion between our current provider, MVT, and First Canada will be critical, and I know that those discussions will begin today. And we will work together to finalize a very detailed transition plan that right out of the gate includes a very strong emphasis on communication with existing employees, because that's part of the transition plan. It's going to be the same drivers showing up and picking people up on July 1st as did it on June 30th. And retaining that knowledge base will be critical, and communicating to our customers. In January, we'll reach 22,000 approximate customers are registered with Handy Dart. We'll be reaching out to them, sending them a letter, each and every one of them a letter in the mail, helping them know what's happening, providing them an opportunity to ask any questions if they're nervous, and many of them may very well be, and we need to work closely with them. And as Kevin said, we've been have every confidence that our current provider will be very supportive. And both of these companies have been through this type of transition before on both sides of the table, I guess, so to speak.
And Mayor Robertson, that was a key component. They had to put forward what the transition plan would be and the costs associated with that, et cetera. And so we were able to judge that as part of the procurement process.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Marcella, and then Anne, and then Tony.
Thank you. Pretty much all of my questions have been answered. Thank you very much, not just with all the materials, but in this discussion. I just have actually a very small one, which was raised by one of our delegations today, and that's around with respect to the existing employees, bringing them in. There was a reference to training. So is that in the existing contract with MV, or is it going to be some new issue with First Canada? Like, how are you going to deal with that issue, or are you? Or is it too detailed for you to have the information at this point in time?
There will be training provided, and First Canada has a very extensive training program, and they will they have training for new employees that they may when they hire, if someone retires, for example, and then there will be a training program to make sure that everyone is understanding the current the practices that are expected. So part of the transition. Yeah.
Okay. Anne.
Thank you. I think I'm kind of asking Gregor's question from a slightly different perspective, and that is, if you're a user of the Handy Dart system for yourself or your child or your parent, whoever you have using it, how will it feel different to them, say, come September? How will their experience feel different?
Our goal, and we're very assured in going this path, and is that it wouldn't feel different at all on day one. And our goal is between day 2 and day 180 that things would actually start to improve with the new performance elements that we're putting into the contract. The way, because of all the other policy elements that we had already gone through in the first item associated with this, including travel training, including online registration and booking of trips, all those kinds of things, that they will see improvement to the quality of service, and that this new partner will help us deliver those things. But they'll see no difference on day one.
Thank you. I think that's important because, data is one thing, and I'm not discounting it, but ultimately people's experience of a system, what we remember is how it made you feel, whether you felt respected and cared for and central. And just going back to some of the concerns we heard earlier, I heard also, I may be interpreting, but a sense of loss of centrality to us and our mission. And I know I speak for everyone on the board and on the staff that that's not something we want to have happen, a loss that the Handy Dart system and all users are central to our mission and important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony.
Yeah, first I just want to commend all the staff at TransLink who've worked on this. I know there's been a significant amount of effort from various departments, because obviously this was a very broad topic for over the last 18 months, and I think you've done excellent work in terms of the process, managing the process. It's been well done, very professional. The only question I have is, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm if there's going to be an ongoing role for the taxi component. And if there is an ongoing role, is the scope of that role, will that change in any way once the new contract is put into place?
I could start on that. Not necessarily. Yes, there is an ongoing role for taxis, and per the update that we provided earlier, there's a lot of work that we want to do on the contracts, the performance elements of that, bringing that in-house into the TransLink enterprise, so that we own those contracts and can structure the financial levers accordingly. Working on the taxi driver training. I know Kevin met just the other day with the head of the Vancouver Taxi Association on this. So that's going to be a key piece. So no, that will continue to be part of it. So that won't change with this element.
Thank you. So I think everyone's questions have been answered. We have a recommendation that is in front of us. It's on page 43 of your package. I also want to echo Tony's comments about how much we appreciate all the work that Sarah and Louise and all your teams have done. I know Jeff is the magician, but you guys are the I know. It's really, So anyway, I just want to say how much we appreciate all the work that you've done on that. So the resolution in front of us is that, so you're ready to make that motion? Okay, thank you very much, Larry. So everyone's had an opportunity to read it. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Anne. And all in favor of approving? Thank you very much. Okay, so I note that we are behind schedule. It is now 4:20. So Jeff, you've got item 5.6 on the agenda. So let's move to that. And I'm sure you can do it in less than 10 minutes.
Recalibrate. With me, I'll start with the easy part, is Andrew McCurran,
Hello, Andrew.
the
Welcome.
Director of Strategic Planning and Policy, and his group has been leading this effort, the policy group at TransLink, working with the Mayor's Council and you and the Planning and Funding Committee on this. Sorry, I'm just trying to leaf to the actual report. So today you see the resolutions that are before you. The number one, the first resolution around approving the structure and the rates as set out was put forward to the Mayor's Council last week and was approved by them as well. The second and third elements are really around direction to staff to be able to move forward in conjunction with the provincial government to be able to bring this into force. Through the steps that they have to undertake in regards to legislation and the steps that you and the Mayor's Council would have to take in regards to finalization of this and including the bylaws associated. I'll just do a quick walkthrough of this. I know we've done briefings in the past. This is, a lot of people are thinking this is around the Phase 2 investment plan. This is actually taking care of business from the Phase 1 investment plan that was approved last November, that had conditional expenditures in 2019, especially related to B-lines and some of the other transit services, if this was not put in place, because we required both the definition from you and the Mayor's Council to put it into force, as well as the actions by the provincial government. So there was over $1 billion of capital in that program that could be the expansion capital. It's important that development cost charges actually have to meet that nexus of being associated with the incremental costs for capital on the system imposed by that growth. So the remit to us from you and the Mayor's Council is before you. We were to go forward and try and design a DCC that met these kinds of conditions. These were the things that were really important. I'll note on item 3 was a really sensitive point, continues to be. We spent a lot of time on this with the Mayor's Council in briefings and at the meeting last time, that it's really important that this development cost charge to you be structured in a way that does not slow down the rate of growth or distort the rate of growth within the region, that all the municipalities, the regional growth strategy are counting upon, and affordability is a key issue. In all the other areas, what we've been trying to do is really hammer out what it means to do a fair DCC. Simple is a little bit more straightforward, so the approach that we've been taking in most categories is to try and replicate the work that Metro Vancouver has been doing on updating their GV, S&DD development cost charge, that they've just completed that work. So there's a framework in here that looks at basically 8 or 9 different areas that makes the recommendation on how this would actually be pulled together. So based on the consultation, this has been a very consultative process as well. Commend the policy group for the work that they've done, working with local municipalities, with Metro Vancouver, with the development sector to get here, as well as with the the policymakers. So this is the recommendation, that it be just around transit capital. There have been some discussions around green infrastructure, but it was decided for sense of clarity and simplicity and accountability that transit capital was the most appropriate. That it be collected region-wide. Everybody within the region benefits and imposes a cost on the transportation system, so some level should be applied across the region. What land uses should pay? The sense is that all land uses similarly impose a cost, so whether it be more of a nominal rate to more proportional to the cost they pay, every use should pay. We'll talk a little bit more about industrial, that there's some work there. That affordable housing be exempted. That's some work that Metro Vancouver is doing right now on redefining what affordable housing definition means, but we want to replicate that so that that exemption is put in place, and that the rate be uniform. So one of the directions from the Mayor's Council and the board, whoops, I was over the mic, was that we look at either a variable rate that could be tied to the level of transit or transportation intensity being expended, or uniform across the region. We are recommending uniform for this at phase one for a variety of reasons, because the investments in phase one are being made across the region. It was a very broad-based plan so that everybody benefits. It's very difficult to determine what fair is. I think we got basically 23 different definitions from the 23 mayors on what the fairest piece would be on this. At the levels that we're talking about for the rates that I'm about to get into, that they wouldn't differ that much to generate 20 million between a uniform or a tiered structure. And as such, the issues around simplicity, transparency, and setting boundaries would be very difficult, and so to go forward with a uniform. But to ask the provincial government to include the potential for tiering in the future. That it should be charged per unit. That's what most municipalities are doing, and Metro Vancouver does. It makes it simpler, and it is a good proxy for usage. The size of the unit, whether it be an apartment or a townhouse, generally is correlated with population, and thus the impact on the transportation system. Our recommendation, it could have been done in the Local Government Act and the Vancouver Charter, but that it should come forward through a change to the South Coast Transportation, or BC Transportation Authority Act, so our own act, so that it would be defined there, but it would be collected by the municipalities like our property tax is right now. And an important piece through consultation both with Metro Vancouver and others, including the development sector, who wants predictability, but that we should be building in inflationary increases in regular review of the rates. If we do not do inflationary, then we're not able to keep pace with the nature of growth within the region. And if you wait for 5 to 10 years, or 20, I believe that Metro Vancouver is in right now, then the escalation margins become very large and more difficult to absorb efficiently. So the rates that are proposed, and we'll have to do some fine tuning, but these are the rates that are proposed to be able to generate $20 million, which was the target for the phase one investment plan. You see them before you. So I think over half, over 50% of the total $20 million would be generated by that third row of apartments, since so much of our development within the region is multi-unit. So that is the key piece. We did a lot of work. We brought in Coriolis to go out and look, I believe, about 36 different sites across the region, look at pro formas, make sure understanding what the existing DCCs and levies are, as well as what the plan changes are, what the land economics are. Could these rates be absorbed in the places where those margins are the closest without fundamentally changing would land come into the supply or not? And their sense is that even at the most suburban elements of the region, in this situation, some areas of Langley, some areas of Surrey and Maple Ridge, where it's the tightest, that $1,200 per apartment unit can be managed and would not change the rate of growth at all. So that was really important analysis. They did a lot of work. There's an appended report on that affordability analysis that they did. We have heard some concerns, and there was a lot of discussion at the Mayor's Council last week around the industrial land use. We will continue to do a little bit more work. There's a varied opinion about whether or not this would have any impact on the development of industrial land within the region, or some distortion of the market, either outside of our market or within the region as well. So we can continue to do that work through the development of the bylaws through the course of next year. So I mentioned consultation. It's been key to do so. We've met with a lot of the development industry groups. We did a facilitated discussion with them back in late October. Had about 20 different developers as well as these associations at the table representing a broad cross-section of the development sector to get input. In general, they felt the rates were really reasonable and prudent, and that's consistent with the quote that you would have seen from UDI, that while they don't normally support DCCs, they felt given the critical nature of the capital investment that we're going forward and the levels that we're looking at, that they applaud the board and the Mayor's Council for moving forward on this. So in general, there was consensus that the rates were doable. There's some difference of opinion whether or not there should be tiering or uniform within it, but the majority of municipalities and the majority of the development sector recommended uniform as part of this piece. We did do some public consultation as part of the Phase 1 investment plan. I believe that the fact sheets and the discussion guide were put forward there. We've been now more transparent on this, and there will be some consultation through the development of the bylaws next year. So the final steps is, assuming that you approve it, that we would develop the bylaws. We would start working with the province on this, and they've been showing some favorable response to this to define, to design for this, so they can write the legislation that would be required to make transit an eligible category, so that we can get this in place by January of 2020. I think that's
Okay.
it.
We've got a couple of questions, and then we're going to call for the actual approval of this resolution. So I've got Larry and then Murray.
Well, one is a comment, and it's more for the people that are streaming, or we're streaming, watching the streaming. And that is to be crystal clear, this does not apply to any existing building in this region. It only applies to new buildings in this region. In other words, it's a tax on incoming people, not sitting people. Is that right?
Absolutely correct. It only goes forward on development, on those uses that we showed, with those exemptions starting in January 2020.
Second question, did you do any comparators with transit development cost charges elsewhere in Canada, for example, like Metrolinx? What do they charge?
Yeah, that we did actually, and I don't actually have it off the top of my head, but the City of Toronto has a transit DCC, and they use that to fund the Spadina subway extension, and I believe it was roughly comparable to what we're proposing.
Oh,
it wasn't a huge part of their program.
Ottawa also uses, they actually have different zones for theirs as well that has a DCC associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, it's maybe more of a detail, but in the recommendation, the recommended resolution, it says to forward to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for review and comment. And I'm just wondering, is that what we want to do, or request that legislation be enacted to allow for a DCC? Or both? You know, I guess
It's a good question, Murray. So actually a resolution's already been passed and a letter sent from the board and the Mayor's Council requesting legislation in the spring of 2018 on the DCC. So the nature of this is to make sure that we have all the framework elements right, and why we would ask for comment, that they have everything that they need to be able to draft the legislation and support the bylaws accordingly. So there could potentially be some iterative approach that comes forward in the form of the final bylaws that are brought before you at that time. But so the request has already gone forward to the provincial government.
It's review and comment now, or as background in order to facilitate the drafting of legislation. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So on that, can I have someone propose that we move this resolution that you see on page 60 of your package? Gregor, thank you. And seconder, Marcella. And all in favor? Thank you all very much. Yes, of course.
The comment, I noticed in Jeff's slides that he referenced the 10-year investment plan, but the review period is in 10 years. The review period, by virtue of legislation, is our investment plan needs to be updated every 3 years at least, and therefore the review of the DCCs would occur at a minimum every 3 years. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Jeff, 5.7 on here, you have 5 minutes. I'd like you to do it in one, please. We are behind schedule, as I mentioned before, so.
Okay. Very straightforward, similar to the consultation report that plan that you approved for the Patello Bridge. Per the act, we need your approval of that plan in order to be able to go forward with the consultation for the investment plan that is defined by our legislation. The contents are in the report. We would be mirroring the approach that we took in phase one with the addition of more in-person, several opportunities for going on site, being able to meet people where they go, given the broad nature of the investments and some of the significant capital that's associated with this. So otherwise very similar, very strong online focus, lots of engagement with public and good tools there, but we will have in-person. That's it.
Thank you. Marcella, thank you very much. Second by Linda, and all in favor? Thank you. Jeff, you're awesome. Okay, your job's done, Mr. Magic. All right, we're going to move to section 6 of our agenda, which is the Finance and Audit Committee, and I'm going to turn it to Tony to provide his chair report.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as you can appreciate, the Audit and Finance Committee has been very busy over the last few months, dealt with a lot of issues. I think just given the time that we have remaining and wanting to focus our discussion on obviously the 2018 business plan, I won't go through the other highlights other than to say that, I did brief at the last strategy session. I gave a bit of an overview, and I think both Kevin and Jeff in their reports sort of covered off where we are on the capital program, because obviously the committee spent quite some time with Zanny on the capital program, but I think you're pretty much up to speed on where we are. So if I can maybe focus the discussion on the 2018 business plan, and just make a few comments before Chris comes and reports to you. First of all, I think I want to thank Christine, the finance team, and really the whole management team at TransLink for the many hours of effort that they've put in terms of preparing this plan. You know, the business plan process is one of the most important undertakings that an organization can take, as it sets its priorities, you know, the plans and initiatives it intends to deliver in the upcoming year. I also want to thank the Audit and Finance Committee and the board for the many hours you've taken actually to review the various drafts and the comments and advice that you've provided along the way. I think that's very important, and I think it's reflected in a better plan for the organization as a result of everyone's involvement. As you know, the business plan process started many months ago, and back in September, management and the Audit and Finance Committee met to discuss the assumptions that drive both the revenue and the expenditure forecast. You know, budget is based upon forecast, which is based on assumptions, and you can only have confidence in the business plan if you're comfortable with the underlying assumptions that sort of drive those numbers. So we had a good discussion on those assumptions, and we came to an agreement that they were both reasonable and appropriate. And I think I reported the results of the discussions to the board and provided you with an opportunity to also comment and received your feedback. Management then proceeded to prepare a first draft of the plan, and we had a board budget workshop where we spent a half a day reviewing that plan. And the good thing, I think, was that the workshop didn't focus solely on the numbers. We also heard from the operating division. So we heard from the bus, rail, and the police, and how their priorities were reflected in the budget. And the workshop also allowed us to ask a lot of questions in an informal setting, and we provided significant amount of comments and feedback to management. Management then took that feedback and revised the plan accordingly. So the Audit and Finance Committee had a chance to review and discuss that revised plan with management. We were comfortable with the revised plan, and we recommended the plan to the board for your approval. You now have had a chance to review this revised plan because it was in the material that you read in preparation for this meeting. And so Chris is now going to, I think, speak to that plan and obviously answer any questions or comments you may have with respect to the plan.
Great, thank you. You got 2 minutes, Christine. No. You take the time that's needed.
No.
This is a big undertaking, and I know we've spent a lot of time on it already,
Yes.
but if board members have any questions, we're here until everybody's satisfied. Okay?
Ready?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've kept it pretty high level, but just wanted to kind of give a bit of the background as to what was in the budget. So the 2018 business plan and operating capital budget is focused on achieving the three main priorities here, as well as the 2018 update to the 10-year vision. So the first one, improve customer experience. With a customer-first approach, we will build public trust and confidence in TransLink by focusing on growing ridership, engaging stakeholders, and delivering the mayor's vision. So some of the initiatives under this priority that we will be focusing on next year include to deliver a safe and secure transit system, improve customer information tools, including digital platforms, implement the custom transit program recommendations that you just went through with Jeff Cross and Sarah, complete the final phase of the transit fare policy review, maintain close relationships with municipal, senior government, and private sector partners, support the board and mayor's council collaboration, and pursue innovative service initiatives. On the state of good repair, TransLink will proactively manage and maintain all assets in a state of good repair, ensure safety and reliability, optimize life cycle costs, and enhance the customer experience. So some of the initiatives under this priority include installing bus operator barriers, implementing a more proactive and planned approach to maintenance at BCRTC, developing and implementing a safety management system at both CMBC and BCRTC, replacing the transit management and communications bus radio system, improving service reliability, and implementing an asset management system at BCRTC. The third priority, mobilizing the mayor's vision, we will successfully deliver the capital projects, service expansion, and policy initiatives necessary to mobilize the mayor's 10-year vision. Some of the initiatives include implement service improvements for bus and Handy Dart, receive initial delivery of the new SkyTrain cars, continue work preparing for the major projects, so the Broadway extension, south of Fraser LRT, increasing SkyTrain capacity, and the Patella Bridge replacement. Pursuing ridership growth initiatives, some of these include corridor upgrades, the B-line corridors, and travel demand management. We will initiate we'll start the work on initiating a long-range transportation strategy plan within a 30-year development horizon. And we will work on the mobility pricing plan following the recommendations of the Independent Commission. So the key drivers, so how do we begin? So the key drivers that drove the preparation of the budget, under the revenue, ridership journeys are budgeted to grow 2.6%. So Kevin went over the significant growth we've had in our ridership to date, but we're forecasting it to grow further by 2.6% over the forecasted 2017. So not in the budget, this is taking our the higher level that we're at. And this is based on the increased ridership from the service expansion that we've put in and the economic growth that we expect in the region. A fare increase is planned for July 2018, and this increase ranges from about 5 to 10% depending on the zone that you're traveling, and $1 to $2 for the monthly pass. The property tax revenue assumption.
Chris, excuse me, what you said 5 to 10%.
Did I?
You meant 5 to 10 cents.
Sorry, I did. Thank you. Thanks. 5 to 10 cents. We used to talk percent, but then we're doing the cents now. And $1 to $2 per monthly pass. Okay. Property tax revenue will increase by the normal 3% on the previous year's property tax revenue, plus the increase from the development and construction growth rates that was in the investment plan, and that's estimated at 1.9%. Fuel tax revenue is expected to grow 1%, and that's based on the expected fuel consumption in our region. And on the expense side, labor costs are per collective agreements. Our service increase in bus and Handy Dart is driving the expense as well, and inflation, general inflation about 2%, and that's not applied on across the board. That's only applied to those areas that we feel are impacted by the inflation. And then contractual increases where applicable. Just at a high level, showing our total revenues, $1.9 billion. Taxation revenues of $855 million represents 43% of our total revenue for the year. This broken down is fuel tax revenue is $388 million. Property and replacement tax is $374 million. Parking rights tax is $72 million, and the hydro levy is $21 million. The transit revenue of $607 million represents 31%, and this, as I mentioned, represents the growth in ridership resulting from the service expansion and the strong economy, as well as the fare increase. So also included in this transit revenue, we have advertising revenue that we categorize under this, about $22 million in advertising revenue. We have rentals, parking fees, and some fare infraction revenue as well. The government transfers represents 22% of the budgeted revenue, and this largely is the money received from senior government for the capital projects. We record it into revenue as we spend it. This year, though, what's also included in here is the projected foregone tolls that the province has committed to providing to TransLink. So rather than have a separate category, it gets into that. Other revenues of $77 million. This includes investment income of $48 million and $23 million from the Canada Line concessionaire credit, and $6 million from our miscellaneous revenue, which is from the recovery programs. You've heard a lot on the adjacent integrated development and those various recoveries. On the operating expenses, they're budgeted at $1.7 billion. How do we spend that? 43% goes to the bus division, 18% to the rail, including West Coast Express. We need 13% for amortization of our capital assets. 10% is to cover interest expense. 6% goes to the roads and bridges, which includes the contributions to municipalities for the major road network. Corporate operations is 6%, and transit police 2%, and one-time costs is 2%. A big portion of the one-time costs is $12.5 million, which is a contingency provision for our policy. So that takes up a big chunk of that. Other one-time initiatives to support the corporate priorities and building on the Mayor's vision include development of the regional transportation strategy that I mentioned, beeline improvements, mobility pricing, independent commission, enterprise asset management system, our Compass open payment, which Kevin also commented on earlier, completion of our fare policy review, and a number of feasibility studies we have underway. So increases in our 2018 budget over the 2017 include, the main categories are our service expansions. We have more buses, more service hours, more routes we're putting on, contractual salary and benefit related increases, other increases such as fuel and insurance, contractual increases. We have increases to our software licensing and technology, and that's we've talked a lot about that along the process as well, and maintenance for maintaining our existing services. On the capital side, the 2018 capital program is aligned with our current priorities. The new capital for 2018 includes upgrades to stations and bus facilities, running rail replacement for state of good repair, expansion and replacement buses for both bus and SkyTrain, upgrades to the camera system on Expo Millennium lines, implementing programmable messaging signs at stations to assist the customers, add to their the quality that they receive, improvements to the public address quality, C-bus maintenance, dock expansion, and design and procurement readiness for the Millennium Line extension south of Fraser LRT and the Patella Bridge to keep that project going. So the new 2018 capital is $412 million. Adding this to the existing capital program, it totals $2.3 billion for our total capital program that we'll be managing. Of this, we're forecasting to spend $928 million in 2018, of which $629 million of that is coming from senior government funding. And there's a full list of all of the projects in the budget document.
Great. You done?
Yes, I've done.
Thank you very much,
Other than
Christine.
questions.
Okay, Murray.
Thank you, Christina. It's, the question I have is around the amortization of capital. What does that include?
What does all of
On the-
our, sorry?
Go ahead.
All of our capital projects, once they're substantially complete, we have to start amortizing that over the expected life of the asset. So it's, or, will be like last year, a big change was we substantially completed the Compass project, so we start amortizing that, the
I
total
understand.
capital
So
dollars.
in the context of finances, what does that mean? Is money being set aside in accounts to represent the depreciated value?
No, it's a non-cash expense.
Okay. So on the revenue side, revenues are all real.
Yeah, so.
That's a non-cash expense. Describe
Okay.
why is that?
Okay, so it looks like, so you're talking cash versus the accrual accounting and the
Yes.
accounting, right? So on a cash basis, so when you see the senior government funding that's coming in as revenue, you're thinking, oh, great, we got all that revenue. So, but that revenue is for those capital projects. So this is the best comparison I can show you. We have to amortize that over the year. So when you look at our accounting PSAB surplus, so that PSAB surplus, we need that surplus to amortize those assets. So that's not on the cash basis. That's why when you look at the PSAB surplus, you think, great, way we got all this money. It's not money. It's to amortize those assets. Does that make sense?
Approximately. I'm maybe we should have a discussion offline about
Sure.
it because I'm
For sure.
I had a second question. Maybe I'll defer. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions for Christine? Yes, Anne.
Thank you for that report. It was excellent, and the plan is well laid out. Does the debt ratio give you any concern?
Not right now. It doesn't. No.
We're
Not with
within
this
our-
plan.
well
We're
within
well
our-
within our. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Murray, have you thought what you're going to ask? Oh, Tony's got something. We'll
Yeah.
give you a little more breathing room.
Yeah, Chris, just to confirm, I think our interest in terms of, as a percentage is about 12% of our revenue, and our policy is 20%. So we're fairly comfortable in terms of being able to handle the debt in terms of at the load that it is right now.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, I
Yes,
should have
okay.
elaborated.
Murray's got his follow-up, and then we're going to call for the question.
Sorry, just it stems from the projections of the expenditures for capital for 2018. What was our projection for expenditures in 2017, and how close are we coming to that projection?
You're testing my memory now. We will be below what we had budgeted to spend. So what we're carrying over in our projects from 2017 into 2018, we will be carrying some over. So we are, I don't have the exact number of the cash flow, but yeah, it is. We did give a cash, I don't think it was the comparison to 2017 budget though. I could provide that for you for sure. It'll be in our year-end report as well.
I guess the reason I'm asking is that my sense is that it's a growing amount of carry forward because we are expanding, and the intention is to ensure that whatever capacity we have to deliver on what we say we're going to deliver will in fact be used.
Yes.
So it's better to be a little bit optimistic than pessimistic because the money is a constraint if we don't have a budget.
Yeah, we have worked really hard to improve our estimated cash flow forecast. It's really important to us, especially from a borrowing program. So we have gotten a lot better over the years. We still have a little bit room for improvement, but we really look at, that's what our 10-year plan is so valuable for, because we update it, even though we're not required to update it we have to update it no less than 3 years. Internally, we'll be updating every year. So we're constantly updating our cash flow as we go out throughout the year. We do it quarterly as well as annually. So you know, if we cancel projects, then that gets reflected. But we have improved, but we can improve more in our cash flow forecasting
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
I don't want my comments to be perceived as criticism. It's
No,
more in the
no.
context of saying that we are in an expansionary mode.
Yep.
And that we're challenged, like industry generally, in attracting talent and getting good value for money when we contract. And we want to make sure that the money that is available for expansion of transit services, of TransLink's responsibilities, is managed cost effectively. And I think that context at times causes us to pause and make sure that we're getting good value for money, notwithstanding the need to deliver projects in a timely way.
For sure.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Christine, I think the fewer questions that you have today are a reflection of the number of hours that have already been spent on this and the time that the board has had to ask you questions. So I thank you for your report.
Okay, thank you.
And can I have a proposer for a resolution to approve the resolution that's on page 128? Okay, and Tony, thank you. And all in favor? Thank you all very much. Okay, so we have one last report, and that's Jim. I remember when I was chairing this committee, I was always the last person of the day. So Jim, thank you.
Last presentation of the year.
That's right, you're right.
Yeah. And Marcella's term. In November, we had our committee meeting and we received the quarterly human resources report. We had updates on labor relations, corporate wellness, the results of an engagement survey from staff, and also an update on staff recruitment. Especially noteworthy is bus operator recruitment. There's some extensive community outreach happening, and there's going to be a relaunch of the transit operator marketing campaign to attract more applicants from a wider and more diverse demographic. We recommended director appointments to our subsidiary operating companies, especially BC Rapid Transit Company and the Coast Mountain Bus Company. And on the governance front, we received the results from the board self-evaluation, so that will require some more discussion at the committee. We also received for information the new director orientation program, of which we'll have 3 new directors beginning January 1st. One of the most important jobs that we have as a board is to select our CEO and also evaluate our CEO. And we just completed our second annual review, and I wish more people were here, but I just want to say that I just wish there were more people here, but I want to say that there's unanimity among the board members in that we have an excellent CEO who's doing just an outstanding job of leading TransLink, and we're really appreciative that he is still working hard, that he's delivering results. I think when Kevin did the year-end review, you can see just so much happening. And again, on behalf of the board, we're really appreciative of the work you do, and we just want to mention that in the open board meeting. So thank you. And that's my report.
Thank you very much, Jim. Are there any questions for Jim? All right, so hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Everybody's on that one, yeah? Okay, thank you. And thank you all very much for hanging in to the end. And on that note, I wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday season. And we'll see you in 2018. Thank you.